Okay guys, welcome back. Now let's get started. So first thing we want to do is Command O, or if you want to be a slowpoke, File Open, or the button over here. And we're just going to go ahead and open the basics, the basic shape file. Now let me resize this. Or, you know what, let's just do this. Let's move it over here. So the first thing that I usually do when I want to trace something is I'll come over here to the layers panel, click this drop down arrow, and you can see you have the image, and you can lock it, and you have what it is. So what I'll do is I'll lock it, so that means I can't move it. It's not going to be selected. If you unlock it, you can do that. So we're just going to go ahead and lock it so you can't move it by accident. Then what I'm going to do, oh, I don't have any swatches. Okay, no problem. I'll just create my own, I guess. Cool. Let's do this. Cool. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, you can click P to bring up the pen tool. Remember the shortcuts. And what I usually do is I will right click on the pen tool and click this little arrow to bring out these four tools. Now you have the pen tool, the add and anchor point tool, delete anchor point tool, and the anchor point tool where you can go ahead and manipulate the anchor point. So we're just going to use the pen tool. I'm going to zoom in, Command plus to zoom, Command minus to zoom out. If you click the space bar and hold the space bar down and use the mouse, you can move around. So that's another little hint for you. So what we're going to do first is let's just start tracing. I'm going to show you how I would trace this, and at the end of this, I would hope for you to download and actually practice for yourself so you can get a little bit of some practice in. So what I do is you can see now the fill is selected. Let's change the color so you can see it better. The fill is selected, so you can see that if I want to try and go and trace with the pen tool, it's going to be really weird, and it's going to actually just be the fill. It's not going to be the actual line. So to avoid that, I would just switch it over to the stroke. So now when you draw, it'll just be the line itself. The line will be colored itself. So usually what I do to start is I see if I can get like a nice little corner. Any spot, anywhere you touch with the pen tool selected is where the first anchor point is going to go. So now that I'm anchored in, the line is going to stay, and I can go wherever I want. So let's start with the beak. So let me zoom in. I'm going to change the color so you can see it a little better. Let's make it red. Okay. So now that I have the first anchor selected, let's get it going here. We got red selected. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the next point I'd like the line to be anchored. So usually in this case on a curve, I'm going to click, but I'm going to hold it. I'm not going to let go. And then as you click and hold, that's when you can start to create the curves. That blue line is going to be, once you let go, where the line is. So if I let go here, that's where it's going to be. So I'm just going to click, let go. Now, you can see where the blue line is. It's not where I want it to be. A way to avoid that is if you just click on the previous anchor point you create, click it, and now you're going to take off from where that anchor point has been laid. So then I'm going to come up, I'm going to come up to just, let's see about here. See now if I let go, I missed. So I'm going to undo it, and maybe we'll come up to here. Okay, click the anchor. Come over here. Now it doesn't have to be perfect, but just so you can get a general idea. Click, click, click and hold, let go, click the anchor. Now I'm going to zoom out, and at this part, so it's like the further you draw, the further you pull the mouse away, the bigger the curve is going to be in this case, because it's kind of like a longish line. Another thing you can do is if you click it and you don't like where so let's just say I click here and I don't like that, instead of like undoing it, if you click the space bar and hold the space bar, you can actually move the anchor point. So I want to get around here. I let go of the space bar, and now I'm going to try to follow that line as best as I can. Okay, it's not perfect, but it's okay. We're going to come down here, click and drag. Click and drag. You want to try to match that curve. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward, and we'll come back at the end. Now, you're going to notice after I made this last anchor point, I'm actually not going to click it, because if you see, the way that the pen tool and the path line is curving is the exact curve and angle I need. So I'm not even going to click back at it. I'm just going to make this anchor point, and then I'm going to make this next one. And you can see that when you do that, sometimes you don't actually have to go back in. Now, in this case, I'm going to go back and click it and get that curve back. But you don't always need to click the anchor point depending on what you're tracing. Okay, so now that we're all done, we have the entire shape of the bird traced. I'm going to click V, selection tool, select off of it. And now you can see that if you click the path, you have this shape. Now I'm going to go ahead and place this over here. And to fill it in, you can either click and drag here, or if you want to choose a different color, you just open up your swatches. Oops. And you can just choose a different color. Yeah, if you ever want to fill it in, you know, make it the same color, just click and drag it, and then they'll both fill in. So there you go. There's our first simple shape. I'll make it black so it's kind of easier to see. Now, a few things here. Now that we have this shape, it's looking pretty good. You always want to make sure, at least for me, I try to be as clean as I can. Now you can see here, you have this weird little protuberance. So if you click on it with the selection tool and then you go over with the direct selection tool, you can go in and see the actual individual anchor points that you have done. You can see all the anchor points, which are the little white squares. Now if you click and drag it, this is where you can come in and actually start to really manipulate the shapes. You could take the handles and actually change the curvature of them. If you, I'm going to undo that because I don't like that. Now, most of the time, if you have something that has like a corner and you see this little, I'll zoom in, you see this little circle here, if you click and drag it, it's going to smooth it out. It's going to smooth that corner out. And if you zoom out enough, click and drag it out enough, no, I got to keep going. Click and drag it out, oops. That's a bad example. Okay, let's try the beak. So if you click it and drag it enough, eventually you're not going to be able to drag it anymore, and it's going to be that you're going to see that red outline. That means it's as smooth as it can go. It's as round as it can go. So if you don't like how sharp the beak is, you can always come back in, smooth it out. That kind of looks like a monkey or something. So in this case, I have this weird little corner up here, so I'm just going to click it, and boom, now it's perfectly round. Another way you can do that is if you have the shape or the path selected, you click the smooth tool, and if you don't see the smooth tool, it'll be the shaper tool. You just right-click smooth tool. Oops, this has to be selected but first, and then you can actually go in, click and drag, and almost draw on it, and it'll smooth it out for you. So that's another way to smooth out the lines. So like right here, there's this weird kind of jagged edge. I'll use the smooth tool. I'll go in, and I'll smooth it out. Or you can click direct selection, and you can round that edge out. So that is how we create simple shapes using the pen tool. Let's go ahead and make a few more. Now I'm just going to go ahead and speed through these because I want you to go in and actually practice yourself. Alrighty. P for the pen tool. Now, if you have the anchor point set and you actually hold the shift button it's going to snap to. I'm clicking shift. It'll snap to and make the lines. What's the word I'm looking for? Like, not symmetrical, but it'll make the lines mathematically sound, if you will. So it's either 180, I think 45, or 90. That's what the snap to will do. So in this case, I don't need it. It's not a 45. But here, if I'm holding, you can see I'm not holding shift, and now I'm holding shift. It's not really moving. So you could just, it's a good way to get straight lines or lines that are perfect. So I'm still holding shift. It's not going to give me the line I want, so I'm just going to go ahead, click that in. Boom, there's the triangle. Come back. If you want, you can like round the edges down, make it nice and interesting. Okay, let's trace this cloud shape. So these kind of shapes are fun, like these bubbly, fluffy type shapes are pretty fun because they're pretty simple. It's just a matter of like clicking on the corners. So you just click a corner, pull it, click a corner, pull it. These are pretty simple, fun, and easy shapes to trace and to make. Okay, so now that I have my cloud shape all finished, this is just kind of, I don't really want to use that. I guess we'll just use this. So now that I have my cloud shape, fill it in, come in, maybe smooth out this line, maybe this line, maybe this line. So now that I have my shape, you can start to copy and paste it. Command C, Command F to paste in front. Command V will just place it anywhere. And then you can go in and maybe, you know, change the color of it. You know, start to layer them on top of each other. You know, you can start to do all kinds of crazy stuff. Rotate it, you know, all that. Okay, so now that we have the shape made, I want to show you something that I think is also important. So you have the line here. It's pretty thin. If you want to increase the weight of the line, you want to make sure it's selected, and then you're going to come over to here where it says stroke, and you can see it's the same two images here as well. And if you want to make the stroke thicker or lighter, you would just add the up arrow, and as you can see, as I'm going up and up and up and up, the line and the stroke is getting thicker and thicker. Now, if you want to make it really small, you can come in and actually type it in. I want it 0.03, and there you can barely see it, but it's really thin. So that's what you can do. Now, depending on how big or how small the artboard is, or the image you're creating is, the stroke length is going to matter. So yes, it's a 9-point stroke right here, and it looks pretty thick, but it's all relative. So if I want to blow this up, you can see it's not nearly as thick because it's bigger. See? Here it is. Here, this is a better example. So let's make it actually really thick, right? That's pretty thick. But if you make it bigger, it's not going to be as intrusive. On the flip side, if you make it smaller, it's going to be pretty crazy. So the stroke width and the stroke size is going to be different depending on the relative size of the shape you're using. So if it's really small, it's going to be much thicker versus very big. It'll be thinner. So just something that I think I should add. Now, another thing I want to touch on before we move on is these tools that I have here. So if you click the image and select it, and then you do the add anchor point, all of these little blue dots are going to be the anchor points. So say you want to add something, add a point to make it a little more complex. I'm just going to click it once, and then boom, that anchor point appears. Then you can go in with the direct selection tool and actually manipulate that anchor point that wasn't previously there. Now let's say I want to delete it. I don't like that anchor point. You're going to use the, you guessed it, delete anchor point tool, which will delete that point. So I don't like that point. I'm going to delete it, and then boom, we kind of go right back. Now, the anchor point tool is this interesting little fella where you can actually manipulate the curves and the position of the anchor point itself. So right now I'm holding the space bar, and it'll let me do that. I let go of the space bar, it'll let me control the actual curvature of that. Or you can click the handle, and now the handle will just move that one side of the anchor point. Oops. And then I can move the other side. So you can really see how deep it can get with just using the pen tool and the features that the pen tool has. Now again, I'm holding down the space bar, change the curvature. So that's a little something else I wanted to touch on before we move forward. So that's basically just the beginnings of how to trace with the pen tool, these simple shapes. I'm going to leave these for you guys. I would really recommend going in and practicing on your own. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just so you can start to get a feel for it. Remember, when you're tracing, you want the fill to be empty and the stroke to be a color. Usually, you'd want it to be a different color than the actual color of the shape you're tracing. So in this case, I wouldn't have the stroke color blue if I'm tracing the hand. I would have it yellow or red or something that contrasts it so you can see where you're going. So go ahead, go practice, and I'll see you in the next video where we're going to use the shape builder tool to create some more complex shapes. Cool.